So now metal vocalists knows a lot more about how to produce the sound. They are able to produce it for hours and hours. You know, voice actor don't train for that kind of thing. Or it's very rare. I know a few of them, but it's really rare that they have so many things that require their voice to be healthy, to not be hoarse, to not, you know, that they're afraid of going there.
Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Matt, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox&Hops Metal Podcast, brought to you by Sound Talent Media and Evergreen Podcasts, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians to talk about their lives, music, and craft beer. I hope that you're having a killer week so far. I most certainly have been. This Vox&Hops episode is presented by Heavy Montreal. Heavy Montreal are Montreal's premier metal promoter, and I'm very stoked to have teamed up with them to bring you Heavy Montreal Presents Vox&Hops Brewtal Montreal, which will be taking place on September 2nd at Corona Theatre. This year's event features Deicide performing their classic album Legion, as well as Cataclysm, who will be performing their classic album Serenity and Fire. Opening up the gig, we got Inhuman Condition. Tickets are now on sale for Heavy Montreal Presents Vox&Hops Brewtal Montreal 2022, and they are selling very quickly, so you should absolutely pick up your ticket if you want to come to this unique metal and beer fest that is happening in my hometown via the link in the description of this podcast. I'm going to be there. You should come hang with me. Trust me, you're not going to want to miss this. I am super stoked to have Heavy Montreal behind the Vox&Hops Metal Podcast. Now, before we jump into today's episode, I'd just like to ask you to follow the Vox&Hops Metal Podcast on the podcast platform of your choice. But more than that, I would love for you to tell a friend about the podcast. Now, this episode is a special one, so I'm going to give you a special request. If there's someone in your life that loves horror movies, specifically zombie horror movies, well, you should let them know that the Vox&Hops Metal Podcast exists. You can let your zombie-loving friend know that there are over 300 episodes where I hang out with extreme metal musicians and we talk about life, metal, and craft beer. If you would encourage one of your friends to become a brand new Vox&Hops head, that would be something that I would truly appreciate. Now, today on the podcast, I'm very stoked to be back with Sébastien Croteau, the vocalist of Necrotic Mutation and the leader of the Monster Factory. Get ready, everyone. This is Vox&Hops episode number 339 that was recorded at this month's Thirsty Thursday virtual hang.
I warn you, what you are about to hear is very disturbing indeed.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Today, I am back with Sébastien Croteau, the three-time now Vox&Hops alumni. He is the fantastic extreme vocalist from Necrotic Mutation, a classic Québécois death metal band. And he's also the leader of La Fabrique des Monstres, the Monster Factory, which is something that he's built over the past 5-7 years. That's just simply incredible, that I really, really want to dig into tonight. Last time we were together, we sort of just picked at it. This time I want to go deep. Let's start with a simple question of how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good, actually, because as you know, personally, I was feeling sick since last December. Mm-hmm. And finally, they found out that I had 3 stomach ulcers. And I had them for a long time. And I didn't know that was that. And then we finally saw that. And they gave me some meds to clear that out. And I got finally, last week I had an exam, medical exam. And they're not there. They left my body. So I'm glad. So I'm still, recuperating from that, because I've been months like with problem in my stomach, with I wanted to feel like I was going to throw up. But then again, I still had a lot of things to do. But, that was there. So I'm going to, I'm supposed to drink beer. But I know, I know I don't go in the concept very well. But I'm just drinking, a little bit of tea now. It's basically because I haven't drank for such a long time because of my stomach. So I'll keep with the tea. So forgive me all. I'm sorry.
There's no stress. And I am so happy that you're feeling better, because you are easily one of the hardest working people in extreme metal. All the things that you're doing, rebuilding Necrotic Mutation up until the pandemic, being a part of a death metal play, La Fabrique des Monstres, the Monster Factory is just incredible. The amount of recordings that you're doing monster voices, zombie voices, extreme voices for video games, TVs, and movies is incredible. And I'm very lucky to be a part of the Athletic the Most. And I'm a part of a thread where I see just how many things you're doing at once. So I'm impressed, and I'm glad that you're feeling better, but I'm also not surprised that, ulcers come with stress. So
yeah, but that one actually, that's the thing. Ulcers come with stress, but also if you take some anti-inflammatory medicine, that's actually where I got these the ulcer, because I had some pain in the neck a while ago, and I took some anti-inflammatory medicine. And that's what gave me the ulcers, actually.
Really?
Yep. And with medicine, they cleared up like in a month, almost like, bam, they were no longer there. So, and that's the thing. I have a lot of things to do. As you know, I'm listening to you talking about me, and I feel tired. Like I'm like, oh, I think I need to slow down a bit. But I love to do that so much that for me, it's not about taking a lot of time to do what I do. I enjoy it. So it's basically about trying to manage the number of hours or time that I have in a day, and to try and do the more that I can with Necrotic Mutation, with the Monster Factory. So it's basically managing time more than, feeling stress about what I do, because I don't, and you saw me when I'm, in a recording room, doing voices or doing voice direction. Sometimes I'm a little bit stressed, but I enjoy myself.
No, you're so good. No, definitely want to touch on that, my experience, because we can't talk a lot about it because we sign NDAs and there's a lot of secretive stuff and there's a lot of money going behind video games. So we can't talk about it very much, but there are certain experiences that I've spent with you where we can talk about. But later, first, let's dive into the shittiest question of the evening. How did you cope with the glorious years, plural, of 2020, 2021, and hopefully not most of 2022, but it's sort of looking like it's going to be shitty again. How have you been coping with these glorious, glorious, glorious years that we're going through?
As for, regarding Necrotic Mutation, we just came back after a long absence, right before, a few years before the pandemic, actually in 2018-19. So we started doing shows again, and that was pretty good. And then bam, of course, the pandemic. So the only show we did was with you, with Cryptopsy and the Agonist, for the Brewtal North.
Brewtal Montreal.
Brewtal Montreal. I'm sorry.
There's a lot of brutal things in my life. Yeah.
So that was the only one. So instead of focusing on doing shows, and most of, when you look at metal bands, they almost all focus on doing an album. Metal band have been so productive into writing new songs, because of course, most of us can't tour, or if we do, it's very here and there. It's sparse. It's not something that's the same thing as before. So most of us are focusing on writing new materials, and that's what we've been doing with Necrotic Mutation, basically writing new songs, preparing for a new album, and concentrating mostly on that. And the thing is, we're not in the, we're kind of almost 50.
You guys are still young on stage. You're still young at heart. You guys still got it. But I understand what you're saying. Priorities have shifted as we get older. Yeah.
Exactly. It's not as if we were 20 and let's go, we're going to tour in a small van and we'll sleep on the floor,
crawl in the van.
Everything. Yeah. So it's not like that. So people have children, people have jobs, people have a lot of responsibilities. So it's we really, when we choose to do a show, it's because, all the right ingredients are there, and we don't say yes to anything like we used to do, Back in the days, just an email, a phone call. Hey, we have a date. We have a show. This place, you're going to be paid in beer and corn. Because sometimes when you go outside of Montreal, people have corn and
It's Bledin, though, really. Corn on the cob. This is a real story. That's a real story?
Well, yeah. a long time ago. We were paid in beard and corn and some stuff. But that was a long time ago. No, we're really focusing on the new album, and we want to make sure that when we do a show, we present ourselves in the best of conditions. We're not going to do a show where the audio equipment is not good or is meh, because we've done that. We've done that for like many years, almost 10 years, and I think we did our part, in Quebec to build the scene and to do that kind of show, to make sure that, we could bring metal in the darkest place in Quebec with 10 people or 15 people. But that's part of what we do. And I enjoyed it immensely. But now it's different. You have to you really choose the kind of appearance you will do and the kind of venue and the kind of events. So it's more like, we might start doing shows again after the album, maybe later on this year. But again, we might be really like picky about the event that we choose to appear. But right now, the focus is all on the album.
It's amazing. I makes me so happy to hear that. And it is wise words for any bands that are listening. When you're young, you should play all the shows that you can play. But as you get older and you're like a refined wine, you should be more choosy. Vox and Hops is all about hanging out with my metal friends, talking about their lives, music, and craft beer. You are drinking tea on your side. I was going to drink a specific beer because I'm talking to the leader of the Monster Factory, but I'm probably not going to. This is called Monstrosity. It's a project that Kahnawake Brewing did with 8 craft beer media people. He created 2 teams, 4 media people in each team. This is one of my collabs. It is a Smoothie Sour at 6.66%. Of course, in this team, we got Beer Brit, IPA Podcast, myself, and Femdebière. The point of this was to make it the most ridiculous beer possible. So we put some carrots in it, some mangoes, some peaches, some mango, and some marshmallows and some cinnamon. It's a killer beer, but we do have Troy here from Labrosse Brewing, and I actually had pulled this one out also. And since Troy is here, I'm going to drink this beer instead. This is Omnius, the Vox and Hops Labrosse collab that came out for their 5th anniversary. Shout out to Philip Ivanovic for creating the killer design work for this beer. I love it. It's a monstrous black Imperial Lager, 9%, just monstrous. I'm going to crack this, pour this out, and I did not ask you this the first time I had you on, all the way back on episode 13. For people listening to this one, this is Vox and Hops episode number 339. So what was your first beer? Do you remember your first beer set?
Oh my God. That was probably, we had some shitty beers back in the day. That was probably in 1980, 87, 88. So it was probably a Labatt or a Molson something, because it's probably beer that we asked somebody who was of age to buy for us.
We're waiting around the corner at the Dépanneur, which is a convenience store for anyone listening from not here.
Exactly. So we're not really, specific about the kind of beer. We just wanted beer.
The effects of the beer.
And it was mostly like Labatt 50 or Molson Export. Yeah, something like that. And I don't remember the exact sort because, of course, the first time I drank beer, I most probably ended up real drunk, and I don't remember. Because when you don't know how to drink, you drink one, you're fine, you drink 2, and then, you drink them all really fast, and then after a while, bam, it hits, and then...
The night is over for you, but everyone else is enjoying your night for you.
No, but usually we all got drunk all real fast. But at least we didn't have any social media. Like nobody was taking video.
I'm so thankful for that.
Or pictures, because I'm so glad for that.
I would like to talk about, you were a part of Brewtal North America. which is where I paired 22 extreme metal bands, Vox and Hops alumni, with metal breweries from across North America. Talk to me about your experience being paired with Le Presbytère. Francis made a really wacky beer, which I really appreciate because he thinks outside of the box. Talk to everyone about that experience, please.
First, I was so amazed when you approach us with that concept. I always wanted to have a beer or whatever kind of alcohol with Necrotic Mutation. And of course, when you approach us, I was like, right off the bat, I even think twice about it. I was like, yeah, we're going to do it. And once we got to talk with Francis, for me, what was important is and for the band that was trying to do something, that matched the concept of course, not necrotic mutation, because when you know what necrotic mutation means, it's not quite tasty. But it was mostly something about a mutation, and we named it La Mutante, which meant the mutant. So we wanted a mix of different, kind of thing, and of course something that was not there, because at this point here in Quebec we had a few beer coming with different band, so we wanted to make sure that it was quite different from what was already on the market in terms of metal band and beer together. So and we all love the IPA, so we wanted to go with that kind of IPA thing, and then we discussed with Francis, and it was okay, maybe a double IPA, and we're gonna and then I don't recall exactly the other thing that was in there. I know it's double IPA, but it's
he brewed two beers and then he blended them together. And I think what happened was because the way that Brewtal North America panned out, I would host Zoom meetings to introduce the bands and the brewers together, and I would basically talk through what do you guys like? What kind of beers do you want to make? And then most of you had mentioned we want to do an IPA, but someone had also said that they enjoyed black beers. And then Francis had the idea of, what if I brew a double IPA and I brew a stout, and then I blend them to make a black IPA. But it's more than a black IPA because it has the actual stout roastiness of it. And that's what he did, and it was killer. Super killer.
And when because we went there at Le Presbytère actually to record some footage, but to actually see how they were making the beer, and that was such incredible. The Francis and Isabelle are such lovely people. So we just went there exactly, and we look at how they were doing everything, mixing things. We even got to, put our hands not in the beer, but just,
You put blast beats. You put blast beats in the beer.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, that was Chuck who actually did that.
I really think that's cool.
Yeah.
I have a concept I want to use that's going to build upon that, called blast beats and wild yeast, but keep going.
and actually, it was cool because it was during, of course, the pandemic that we went there, and we were, really careful. But just to go outside of Montreal,
yeah,
that was because we don't go out much. We don't. So just to go outside of Montreal and with the rest of the band, that was just amazing, an amazing experience for everyone. And of course, we wanted to announce, because we used the occasion to talk about the 30th anniversary of Necrotic Mutation. So we kind of announced a few things, a new T-shirt that you're wearing now, a new album, and stuff that will happen later on this year. So that was just an amazing experience with them and with you for that. And of course, the culminating point was the show that we did.
I was very, very happy to build up Brewtal Montreal. It's something that I've had in my mind for quite some time, obviously heavily inspired from Decibel Metal and Beer Fest. Really enjoyed the concept of having good craft beers, extreme metal bands performing at the same place. Having spoken to so many extreme musicians, I know that there's a linkage. The refined palette of music where we enjoy more complex things goes hand in hand with more complex beers. So to build that lineup and to pitch it to JF Michaud from Evenco, saying there's a whole bunch of amazing extreme metal bands from Montreal that are not touring right now. There's a huge fan base in Montreal that's not getting that itch scratched. Let's build a show. And then it was like, here are the bands that I want. And he was like, yes. And I pitched it to you and you were like, yes. And it was just so easy. And what a night. And we won't go into the details of how close it came to not happening, but
yeah,
a time capsule. Like it could have been a TV show, like me building up the whole festival. And then the finale is the night of.
Definitely.
It was a great night. Talk to me about your experience being on stage finally after that long.
No, that was amazing because and you know, the measures were just, being, less and less a little bit before the show. So they just announced, okay, now we can accept gatherings of X amount of people. So we were just lucky that it happened, because a few days after there were a few metal shows. Actually, there were a COVID outbreak from a show at Fufun. I think there was at Fufun and some other places, and so some events were canceled right after the show. Like I think the day after, but yeah, that was just, and that's the thing. I remember I was so out of shape. Actually, when you approached me for that, I'm in shape for a studio recording session, but I don't move much when I do voices for I move, but it's not the same thing.
Was it a flashback? I remember and I only remember this as we sat down here right now. During the first Vox and Hops we had together, you had been told that when you were on stage, you had to headbang as much as possible.
Yeah.
For your first gig ever. And then you did, and then you were dying. Were you feeling like that, or did you got into shape, I imagine?
No. Actually, when you approached me for that, I was like, of course, I was, yes, right off the bat, but I was worried about, being inactive for so long. I've worked from home since the beginning of the pandemic, and it's really different. I'm with the virus and with everything you do, it's like, God damn it, you don't really go in a restaurant because they're closed. You don't. So you stay home. And for me, of course, we'll maybe get into that later, but I work for the Monster Factory, building the international team pretty much. So I work in front of my computer so much. So, we haven't been practicing also for a long time, because we rehearse at Cité 2000, and that was closed for a few months. So when you practice metal music, you get in shape, because it's intense. It's really physical. So with none of that, with no really physical activities, I was like, damn, I need to get in shape a little bit. And then of course we started rehearsing a little bit because Cité 2000 opened. But I remember I was really worried, like a few minutes before going on stage, because, as you get older, I'm 46 now. I warm up a lot before, like vocally and physically, which, I didn't do when I was 20. Nobody knew about warm ups, really.
There was some warm ups, but
yeah, but like, okay, I'm good to go.
Yeah,
that was basically it. There was I wasn't stretching like I'm doing now. I'm not doing like 30 minutes of different exercise for my voice. So I remember, like, right before we went on stage, like I did them all. I stretched and I was ready. And that's the thing. And since I have short hair now, I don't have that thing going out, that I can use, just to, when you want to just rest instead of running on the stage, you do that a little bit and it's fine. You can almost rest a bit when you do that, but I don't have that anymore. It's really more visual contacts, but I'm trying, to move on stage. And probably around the last 3 songs, I remember I was feeling that burning sensation with the abs muscles and the diaphragm that you get, when you have not been doing a lot of physical activities, especially as a vocalist. And I was like, God damn, don't tell me I'm gonna be out of breath and be so that was, in the back of my mind. And at the same time, I was trying to concentrate on you move a little bit less, but your main thing is to sing. So sing, motherfucker. Like, this is what you have to do. You don't have to go around and be a chicken around the stage. You just need to make sure that your voice is there, and that if people complain about something, they'll be complaining about me not moving enough around, but not complaining about, hey, Sébastien lost his voice, or, his voice was not for me. That would have been not really good. But I was glad, because everybody came to me after, was like, wow, man, that was amazing. Your voice was like, and I was just, yeah. But I remember the last 3 songs, and I was so glad that the last song was with Marie-Hélène Landry, because I was like, okay, the last song I'm not singing alone. I'm gonna have some help. I was so glad when I called her on stage. I was like, in my head, I was like, oh, it's gonna give me a little break, so at least I'm gonna end but on a bang, and not like something like that,
which happens. It's happened sometimes. You're 100% right.
No, exactly. Sometimes it happens, and we play so rarely now
that it would have stayed in your mind,
exactly, and in the mind of the people, because the way they remember the old Necrotic Mutation and now is that we can deliver. So just a tiny scratch on that we can deliver kind of mark would have been, terrible for me in my mind and for the band. And I was like, nope, I don't want that to happen. So fortunately it went well, but I remember, like, after the show,
you came straight to me and we recorded an interview.
Yeah, and you saw me. I was like, and we did the interview, but after that, probably took an hour before I went to see people in the public, because I just needed to rest. And the same thing happened when we did the show for the 25th anniversary for the metal in Montreal with Maurice, the show we did with Oblivion.
Yeah.
The same thing happened. I remember we did one hell of a show, and after that, like, I was an hour outside the show just trying to catch my breath, because it has been so long that we did a show. Of course, we've been absent for a couple of years back then. So I was out of breath, but I'm just glad it didn't show on stage. Like, for me, that would have been the worst.
Because you're a pro. This is amazing. I really like it, Troy. It's got the blackness, but it's ultra crushable, which is super dangerous at 9%. It's I like it. I like it. Omnious. Let's dive straight into the Monster Factory. I feel like you fell into this, the career.
Yeah.
Montreal is a renowned city for video games. And definitely. I think had you have not lived here, I don't think it would have happened. I think it's a real circumstance. Yeah.
I agree with you. It's a bunch of happy accidents.
Yeah.
That made the Monster Factory. When I started as an extreme metal vocalist in 1992, a long time ago. When
I was 9, yes.
Yeah. No, actually, it's 1990. I started in 1990. Yeah. My first demo was in 1992, but I started in 1990, so it's been 32 years now. And at some point, I wanted to try something else with my voice. I was really happy to be an extreme metal vocalist, and after a few years, I thought, and that's where I was wrong, but I thought I reached my peak as a metal vocalist. Yeah,
you're like, there's nothing else I can do. I've done it all.
No, but not I've done it all. But it's I'm there. I'm at the summit of what I can do with my voice. So I wanted to look for something else.
Were there singers that you saw performing that were doing voices that you couldn't do, that you were like, oh, I can never do that? Because the scene was different back then. There was like it wasn't like nowadays with extreme vocalists.
No, but that's the thing. I was good at what I was doing, and I was not trying to do what other people, so I wasn't looking at vocalists and say, oh, he's doing something I can, so I'm going to try and do that or do that. I just love what I was doing, and I was good at it, and for me, like, that was it. I'm the kind of farmer who's good at cultivating potatoes, and I was like, I do good potatoes, so I'm gonna.
I make the best potatoes.
That's the only I'm only worried about that. So when I was focusing on that, but I wanted to do something else with my voice. And then again, the first happy accident or one of the first happy accident was that I discovered throat singing, Tibetan throat singing, Inuit throat singing, Tuvan throat singing. And I was lucky because my drummer at the time, Renée Lacharité, her girlfriend was reading a magazine, and she found out there that there was a guy teaching throat singing in Montreal. So I called him right away when I discovered that. She brought me the article, and I called him right away. I said, hey, I want to learn more about that. And then I think the week after, I was taking lessons with the guy. And then a few months after our first meeting, I was already his assistant. Because I was able
I'm not surprised.
I was able to do stuff that he couldn't do. Like I learned it really fast. And of course, from there, I started to get into more throat singing stuff, discovering what I could do with my voice, with, doing harmonic resonances with the tongue, doing what we call the kargara, doing different style of throat singing. So I was really happy with that because it was still in the realm of what I call vocal distortion. Because a lot of people don't know about it, but Tibetan voice technique, Tuvan voice technique, Inuit voice technique, and metal voice technique are really, 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 really close from one another. And I got the chance to discover that back in 1997. I went to the Hospital of Montreal, and we were one Tibetan monk, one Inuit throat singer, and two death metal vocalists. And the other death metal vocalist was Marie-Hélène Landry from Obsolete Mankind. So we went with an ethnomusicologist and a otorhinolaryngologist, and we got camera in our mouth. And back then, in 97, they were quite huge.
I can imagine so, yeah.
Yeah, nowadays they're smaller, but back in the day, they were, really huge. So they got to look at how we were able to produce the different kind of sound. And it was really funny because, who would have thought that a Tibetan monk, an Inuit throat singer, and two death metal vocalists would end up having camera in their throat together and just looking at how they were producing sound.
So the Tibetan monk and where we're doing throat singing, you guys were doing death metal growls.
Yeah.
And they were analyzing to see how the folds were reacting with each sound.
Exactly. How the physical element, what were the physical element in the production of the sound that we were doing, but also they were doing acoustic tests. So they were able to look at, the sound wave and to identify different elements with the sound that we were doing. And that's what we ended up seeing, is that when the Tibetan throat singer are doing their voice, the low voice, a lot of people think that they are singing low, but that's the thing. They're not singing low. They're actually using their vocal cords in a very peculiar way. They make two kinds of vibration on them. When we speak, when we sing naturally, the vocal cords tend to be like, I simplify it, but it looks like this a little bit, And then when we were looking at the vocal cords of the Tibetan monks, they were vibrating. There were two kinds of vibration on them. And when we were looking at the sound, there were still the fundamental note, so the note that they are singing, but we could see right below, there was what we call a subharmonic, which is a note below the note that you're singing, and it was exactly an octave below the note. So their singing voice is not, oh, this is the note that they're singing. And when they are activating the second vibration, they're producing the subharmonic, which is the note below the note. So okay, two vibration in their case equal subharmonic and low voice. And then we went to see with the Inuit throat singer. And the Inuit throat singer, of course, they're doing it a little bit differently, but they have two main vocal techniques. One of them is like, and when you hold the note, it's Tuvan throat singing. And when you look at the physical, what's happening physically, It's the same thing. And the thing is, it's that their fundamental note is a little bit higher, right? So we might think that it's not the same thing, but when we were looking at the sound wave, it was exactly the same thing. There was one note, one fundamental, and there was a note, an octave below the note that they were singing. So it's like, okay, Inuit throat singer uses basically the same technique as Tibetan monks, just a little bit different, but it's basically the same thing that's happening. And then they were doing their other thing. And then when we started to look at that, the second vibration was not happening on the vocal cords, but it was the false vocal cords who actually was doing the second part, the second vibration needed to produce that low drone, you know? Because this is the note that they're singing, but the note that you can hear is different. So we're like, okay, wow. So in all the things that we've seen now, it's basically always two kind of vibration on the vocal cords or with the help of the false vocal cords. And then we arrived to the metal vocalist. And what we saw was exactly that, was that the second vibration was coming from the false vocal cords. So when I do, this is the note that I'm singing. And when I'm activating my false vocal cord, it produced the exact same thing, a subharmonic that I amplify. So when you look at Tibetan, Tuvan, Inuit, and metal vocalists, it's basically the same thing. We activate different kind of vibration on our vocal cords or with the help of our false vocal cords, and then we produce that subharmonic and we amplify it. So right then I was like, wow, you know, I want to know more about that. I want to try more things. And I was like, and back until that point, I really thought that metal vocalists were doing something new in terms of vocal distortion. But as soon as we got out of that amazing meeting with the Tibetan monks, I was like, okay, I'm an extreme throat singer, and my grandfather and grandmother vocally are Tibetan monks and Inuit throat singer. Because we basically we use a lot of different things, but we basically apply the same technique in different ways, but there's always two kinds of vibration, vocal cords or on the false vocal cords. And of course, after that, I went hard into throat singing. I even had a band called the Globetrotters, where I was, mixing throat singing, death metal voice, my normal voice. We were doing bluegrass, jazz, Japanese music, metal music, didgeridoo. That was like the probably the most incredible musical experience I had in terms of, we just said like, fuck it. We just want to try stuff.
There's no limits here.
Yeah, no limits. Exactly.
It was your Mr. Bungle phase.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, from there, I started discovering more weird sound that I could do. And I was just exploring my voice. And at some point, one of my friends, Alexandre Pelletier, who was working at Ubisoft in Montreal at the time, in 2005, he contacted me and he was like, well, my audio director is looking for weird voices for creatures in video game. And he was like, I thought of you because you can do so many weird shit with your voice. So, I gave him my name. I went there, I looked at the creature, and I was like, oh yeah, this one, we might try and do that. This one would be another one. And then I waited a couple of months because I've learned very quickly that in video game world, you have to be really patient. It's not the same thing in the music. Music, someone call you for a gig, you got to be bing, and then, sometimes it's a little bit faster. But in video games, sometimes you work on the project and they're going to call you back a year and a half after. or if you work on something, you can only talk about it a year and a half or 2 years later, like what happened with Marvel Guardians of the Galaxy.
Absolutely.
So I was like, okay, so I really thought I blew my audition off because the first time, because it took so much time that the company came back to me. I was like, I blew it, man. I was like, maybe he thought I was too chatty or I had too many ideas or whatever. I was like, he didn't like me. But they called me back and I went there, and it's funny because the visual that they've shown me back then, a few months before, and when I arrived in the studio, the creature was not the same.
which also happens, right?
Yeah. And I wasn't aware of it. So I read it and so I was like, okay, so the voice that I had in my head for different creatures, like I needed to adjust or adapt very quickly after that. And it was my first gig as a voice actor. And I did 8 hours screaming for 2 days.
So what was your experience before that?
In voice acting? None.
Not voice acting, but like say you, for Necrotic Mutation, you walk into the studio, how many hours would you go in a row?
2, 3. Okay.
So it's a massive uptake of extreme. And it's weird. Unprepared sounds at moments. Unprepared,
and I use different voice technique, and that's the thing.
Yeah.
I when I do Necrotic Mutation, I know what I'm doing.
You've calculated every second of every moment for the past 10 months. Here you are, you walk in, the creatures are completely different. So here comes a new voice, a new technique, an inhale versus an exhale.
Exactly. So I try a bunch of stuff. It worked, but again, after 2 days, I remember I was spitting blood. Like that wasn't good. That wasn't good. I was like, nope. But I really love the experience, and since you've said it so well, Montreal as a video game hub and even Quebec, there's more than 200 something video game company here in Quebec.
Really? I didn't know that.
No, there's a lot. And in Montreal, there's probably 100 something, just here. So the word got around that there was someone who can actually do some weird voices for video game. And I remember, like, I've probably waited 2 years after my first gig, and that was Far Cry Instinct, because I know I didn't name the video game. If you played Far Cry, the first one that was released on Xbox, Far Cry Instinct, that was my first gig as a voice actor. And then right after that, probably 2 years after, I got called back from Ubisoft again, and when I arrived in the studio, I saw Ezio, the character from Assassin's Creed, and I was like, do they want me there? There's no monsters, there's no creature in Assassin's Creed, and I was like, what the hell? And what they requested of me was that in Assassin's Creed you have this poison blade that you can poison people. And they wanted me to do the sound of people choking on their mucus. So I was like, okay. So I had a 2-hour recording session with me just doing like for 2 hours. Doing that for 10 minutes is fine. For 2 hours, it's really something else. So I had a small bucket in case I was going to throw up, because at some point, consciously that you're not choking, your body reacts very differently. So I was like, at some point I needed to take a break. I was like, I'm going to throw up. I need to stop it. And after that, I just went from Far Cry to Assassin's Creed, Prince of Persia. And at some point, I was like asked, hey, we have female character. And of course, I can't do female voice. I did once, but that was for a very specific project. And they were like, do you know other metal vocalists who would be able to do that? And actually, I remember the first one that I brought in was Marie-Hélène Landry, my good friend, which sing with Necrotic Mutation, Feeding on Human Flesh since forever. Like she wasn't the first one to sing it with us, but probably like around 97 she already was singing that song with us. So and then from there, just like, okay, we have more character. So I kept bringing in more metal vocalists in there.
Okay, I'm going to stop you there because I have some questions I want to build up upon. Why? And I know the answer. And for people that don't know this, I think it's hilarious. I went to Seb's house to record episode 13, and we spoke about the Monster Factory the whole night. I left his house. It was late, and I had never recorded my Vox and Hops episode. We just spoke about the Monster Factory the whole night. We had to meet up again. But that night, he mentioned a lot of these stories. So I would like you to tell everyone why metal extreme vocalists are more efficient at performing these sounds for voice acting versus a trained voice actor.
For a incredible number of reasons. First, the way metal vocalists train, and nowadays we know a lot more about how we can physically produce those sounds. So I remember back in 1990, there was no harsh metal vocalist teacher. You know, the best teacher was a cassette, because I was born in the era of cassette, and we were putting that cassette and we were trying to imitate the voice that we were hearing. That was our only teacher back then. So now metal vocalists knows a lot more about how to produce the sound. They are able to produce it for hours and hours. You know, voice actor don't train for that kind of thing, or it's very rare. I know a few of them, but it's really rare that they have so many things that require their voice to be healthy, to not be hoarse, to not, you know, that they're afraid of going there.
Because their voice is their livelihood.
Yeah. And you know, like for me, I don't do it every day. So if I do a 4-hour recording session in the morning after my voice is a little bit tired, it's okay because I don't have another contract. I can understand that for them, it's like, it's they want to be safe with what they do with their voice, so they don't tend to go there, right? As opposed for us, we can do those kind of sound for a long time. So just when we go in a studio, and even for voice actor that has to do what we call barks, you know, like grenade, or they have to scream different, you know, short words or short sentences. For them, it's real hard, even that, because they're not trained for that. So for us, you know, just being able to have the endurance to go through a 3-4 hour recording session, and we're okay, you know, at the end. But not only for that, today, a lot of those voices of those sound for creatures and monsters are done with sound banks, with animals sounds, or with a software called Dehumanizer. And you can hear, if you listen to sci-fi or horror movies, you can hear that software mostly everywhere because it has a very distinct signature in terms of what it does to the voice. And usually you can play with the pitch of the voice. You can make it lower, but it's really distinct. And it's kind of, I don't know, it doesn't feel natural.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely not organic, right? So
exactly. But this is a kind of thing we can produce without any software to modify our voice. You know, I'm teaching voice acting, and I was showing my student the effect of that software on their voice. Then I speak like this, just. And this is the kind of effect that software do with the voice, but we can do it naturally.
And how much time versus having all these sound banks and using the dehumanizer? I feel like having an extreme metal vocalist walk in, we can nail things a lot faster, which is much more time efficient.
Definitely, but for sound designers that need to create sound from animal sounds, first you have to take all the sound and try and mix it together and try to make it match on the video animation that they have. For us, we can just look at the video animation, and right off the bat, we can look at the creature movement, and we can match it like right off the bat. So it saves them time, I think, for sound designer. And then after they want to add, sound effect, or if they want to use a walrus sound and put it as a layer on our voice, the source material is acting. And that's the problem with Soundbank. Soundbank don't act. They don't. And that's the thing, having voice actor being able to do that, we can act. We can be angry, we can be sad, we can be, all those emotions that you can have in a creature, even in creature and monster. Sometimes monster feels sadness. Even if they're savage beasts, sometimes they're sad because they didn't.
Monsters have feelings.
Yeah, but sometimes it's just because they are hungry and they don't have enough brain to eat, and they're a bit sad about that. And we need to play on that kind of emotion. But that's the thing. That's why we need voice actor to do that, because we have a whole level of emotion that we can't find in sound banks. And that's the thing, even sound banks. Let's say you want to do a scary creature and you want to make the voice scary. When us humans want to be scary, and even when animals want to be scary, we use a very precise vocal sound. Even with the animals, when they're mating, they have a distant vocal sound. When they're doing different things, they have a distant vocal sound.
But in the bank, that doesn't exist. It's just always one
but in
roar.
the bank, we don't know where those sounds come from.
Exactly.
It might be the bear scratching his back on the tree and is just being satisfied. We don't know where they come from. So it's hard to take those sounds with no distinct intention, and trying to mix them together and make it scary. For me, very rarely the industry, the movie and the video game industry was able to do really something good with that. And my first example would be Chewbacca. Chewbacca is a mix of so many different animals, but when you listen to it and when it doesn't look like just, there's a range of emotion. They've worked on it a lot. But when we think about voices coming from Soundbank, there's not a lot that are memorable. But when we go to voice actor, and of course Andy Serkis come to mind with Gollum and with a lot of other things that for me it makes all the difference in the world. And I'm the kind of guy who prefer the old Yoda with practical effects than CGI. And for me, CGI is kind of the equivalent of the sound banks with animals. But I'd rather go with something more close to heart, with a human in there that can actually make another human feel something. And that's also the thing. Human process the sound very differently. We have a very distinct zone in the brain where we process human sound independently from all the other sound. So when we hear a human voice, we connect to it very differently.
Versus a robotic, dehumanized effect.
Or whatever. Or alter or no, not
or an animal one.
When
even.
There's a human element, exactly, for animals, and when it's other kind of sound, we don't process it the same. So for me, one of the argument is that we can really connect more to people, and for an industry like the video game industry, who spend millions for an immersive experience, having that kind of connection, even for your creature or your monster, is invaluable, because I think it brings new heights to the immersive experience that they wanna players to have. So that's why we're the best.
I switched gears. I went to Monstrosity to match the Monster Factory discussion that we're having. It's awesome. The cinnamon comes off a bit strong. The carrot is subtle. It's Crusher. In my opinion, it's better than the Monstralicious one because it was a competition. But it's amazing. K-Town bringing the goods. Another design by Filip Ivanovic, by the way. You needed so many people because so many video games kept hitting you up. The team had to keep getting bigger and bigger. It came to a point where you were like, I need to bring this across the globe. Talk to me about that. What was that decision?
Actually, 2 years ago, we were 16 metal vocalists in the Monster Factory in Montreal. And when we were working, and now we can talk about it, but when we were working on Marvel Guardians of the Galaxy, because
we were supposed to have, I've been rescheduling this Thirsty Thursday hang with Seb for probably 13 months because we had a media blackout, and we still do. We still can't talk about a lot of the stuff, but we can talk enough that we can have this chat right now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So when we were working on it, at some point we did some of the stuff in some of the voices, and you did as well in English. And I was like, I asked the audio director, I was like, the game is going to be translated in German, probably Chinese, Japanese, Arabic, or when there's AAA video game, they're translated into a lot of different languages. I was like, what are you going to do with the other?
Sorry, AAA video game. What does that mean?
AAA video game. These are the bigger games that are made with
the cream of the crop.
Yeah, exactly. And with millions of dollars in terms of budget, and AAA is like, I don't know what's the equivalent in.
I'm going to say the A market of touring, but that doesn't help because that doesn't know that sphere of things either.
No, I was going to go it's like XXX, but it's not the same. It's not the same at all. It's not the same at all. But at least, these are the biggest video games that are made. And I was like, if you're looking for voice actor, because I was like, nobody else can do the voices that we did, except other metal vocalists. For me, I was like, it's going to be so hard for a Japanese voice actor or German voice actor try to come up with that voice. I was like, maybe I can find other metal vocalists around the world and try and make them do the voice acting for the game. But once I got the answer from the casting department and the localization department from IDAS Montreal, they already said they were like, sorry, we started the casting for X months ago. And I was like, okay. But even with their answers, I was like, this is such a great idea. Having other metal vocalists around the world so that sometime when we do the English or the French version, because sometimes monsters and aliens and they do talk.
Not I think zombies. Even more and more now.
Yeah, more and more now. But even just weird voices. We want that kind of thing in video game because it stick in the minds when you have something that is not just it's out of the ordinary. So that's funny because you ended up being a huge part of the building of the international team of the Monster Factory, because of course right off the bat I started to contact very few people that I've known throughout the years, but I was like, and I remember I sent you a message. I said, hey, I explained to you the project because you were already part of the Monster Factory, but you couldn't really announce it.
Talk about it.
Exactly. So you ended up sending me a bunch of names like Brita Gertz from Eris, and so then I went from there, from your suggestion, mostly, and contact those people. So I spent probably a year and a half recruiting more than 100 metal vocalists around the world in different countries just to make that international team possible. And it was in different time zones. So sometimes my meetings were at 5 a.m. in the morning, 6 a.m. here, sometime later. In some places I have 12, 13 hours of
time difference.
Time zone. Exactly. And that was really something, because I had to explain the project, what I was looking for. I was having probably an hour long meeting, but of course, meeting fellow vocalists in a pandemic where you don't go out and you don't speak to a lot of people, most of the meeting ended up being 2 hours, 3 hours, because we were just
enjoying the conversation.
Yeah, the voice talking about, oh, you do that, and sometimes just doing weird sounds. So of a meeting, we're just like, yeah, can you do that? Oh yeah, I can do that. Oh, can you do? Oh yeah, I can do that. So it was noisy, but that was fun, and that was just amazing. So we built that international team, and of course we announced it very recently, but it's mostly because of what happened with Guardian of the Galaxy. The idea of having this team of metal vocalists that can do so many different languages, so when there's a need. And of course, a lot of contract and voice acting are done locally, meaning that there's some contract in Sweden or in Denmark that I might not have access to from Montreal.
Because they book it there and they record it there. Yeah,
exactly. But if I have a team there, I can train my team to be ready to just do those contracts, right?
Which looks great for the Monster Factory and is great financially for the Monster Factory at the same time.
Yeah, and for metal vocalists. And that's the thing, most of people, the main thing that come out of those meetings was, I don't mind the money. Like that was not because of course we're getting paid.
Well, the money is really good. Is what's really was another thing that when you can you introduce me to these people? I was like, do you like video games? Was my message? Do you like movies? Did you ever imagine making sounds for a movie? I'm like, and plus it pays really fucking good.
Yeah.
Which as extreme vocalists is never something we get pitched. It's like, hey, do you want to do something for free?
Yeah. No, we're not doing it for free. We're being paid. But that was not the main thing coming out of extreme metal vocalists. It was, I want to explore what I can do with my voice. And that was the main the main selling points, if you want, even with all you're gonna get paid and everything else. They were saying to me like, I'm gonna try and do new stuff with my voice, and I could see their eyes lighting up.
There's 100 of us, no?
Yep, 100 of us, a little bit more than 100 of us in 17 different countries.
It's crazy.
And we've been, because of course we said we have non-disclosure agreements, so we can. It's hard to go in a lot of things right now.
But there's a lot of very interesting things going on.
Of course, definitely. And one thing I can say is that even before we announced the international section, we started to do casting in the state, like with Riley from Allegion, with Cheney from Antios, with Danielle, with Gerard. We already started.
Alvarez too.
Yeah. There's actually, we've done, like, if you know the video game Dead by Daylight, the last 16 characters were done by metal vocalists. Like in Guardian of the Galaxy, we were 14 metal vocalists. In Dead by Daylight, there's 16. So right now, it's the most metal game out there.
and the good thing about Dead by Daylight is that it's never over, right? So and with the experience that they've had with the Monster Factory, they're just going to keep coming back.
Well, we've done the last 16, so I don't know why. Yeah, I think they're happy with what we are offering. Of course, it's slightly different from monsters because we do humans, we do killers. But they're mostly human voices. But again, even with that, even with people screaming like that, there's a vocal distortion in there. And again, voice actor, they don't want to go there really. So we're still the best people to do that kind of vocal distortion closer to the normal voice. So there's that, and we even did a character in Japan. Mirai Kawashima from Side did a character in Dead by Daylight. We had a Russian death metal singers that live in France, Irina, and she did one character again. So we did a couple of ones in the state, and now we were able to extend a little bit. One character in Japan, one character in France, and
the reputation is going to speak for itself. It's just going to keep growing. No one can top the Monster Factory and Extreme Voices. I'm a firm believer. I have been since that night in your apartment when I was recording the Vox&Hops interview. I was hooked, and I remember walking home that night and trying to do throat singing.
You all do. You all do. And this is the kind of the new drug of metal vocalists doing throat. And there's so many of you, there's so many of us who are good at doing throat singing.
I'm not surprised because it is so linked.
Vicky Sarakis, a few months back, I saw Will Ramos talking about throat singing and the harsh vocal and doing throat singing. And I was like, wow, and it looks so easy. Well, there's a reason for that. We use the same voice technique. That's why, people kind of struggle to make the link between harsh vocal and throat singing. But like I say, it exists. And that's why so many harsh vocalists are so good at throat singing.
I want to talk about you directing stuff. I've done 2 recording sessions with you. I won't talk about what it was. But you were so involved, like just giving little clues and hints into how we should perform. Talk to me about directing, voice acting for extreme vocals.
Well, the thing is, actually, Marvel Guardians of the Galaxy was not my first gig as a voice director. I had one before on a little game called Shadow of the Tomb Raider. I did also...
Which is the game that had just come out when I went to your house that night.
Yeah, exactly. So I was also what we call an additional voice director for the game. But before that, I started doing voice direction mostly because I'm still working for a studio in Montreal called Signal Space Lab. And I started with them probably 8 years ago when they were called Wave Generation, but now it's... and we've been working for the last 5 years, and I can talk about it because we could actually announce the project. It's Project TL, or what they call Lineage Eternal. So the game has been announced quite a few times, but it's not out yet. So I started doing voice for that game, and then at some point, they were like, okay, you're good. Like, you don't need a lot of direction when you do that. You're really quick at understanding, when the monster needs to attack or dies or do efforts, like what, because it's really, there's tiny differences sometimes.
The subtle differences that you have to apply and to have someone be there and be like, no, you need to do it like this. No, you need to do it like that. It takes time.
It takes time.
Some people, metal vocals walk and be like, make the same sound over and over again.
And they think it's different, but it's not.
Exactly.
And that's the thing in voice acting. When it comes to what I call environmental sound, like when you need to attack, to do efforts, to jump, to do everything, I teach that here in Montreal at the National Institute of Sound Images. And believe me, it's incredibly difficult to be able to be good at that. People think it's easy, and sometimes it's funny because I look at the comments below sometimes some video on YouTube of because for the game Dead by Daylight, a lot of people are hacking the sound file and putting a video with just the screams on them, and I love that. I think for me it's good because I can listen to the work of my team without having to play the game, which is good. And sometimes I see the comments like, oh, I could do that. I could scream like that. And I'm always like, fuck no. You think you can, but believe me, you can't. And it takes a lot of work to be good at that. It took me 15 years to be able to be so good at that I can teach it.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. I'm also, contrary to other voice director, I'm also able to give precise sound reference.
It's unbelievable. It's so helpful. It's like not someone just saying, no, do it like this. No, you're like, make it sound like this, which is unbelievably easier than just a worded description of how
exactly.
You should sound.
Sometimes voice director will go like, can you be like 10 to 25% more aggressive, or can you... And for me, like, okay, you need to do a dead sound. The first sound is, and then there's the choking part, and then there's the last breath. So I just can't do the whole sound, and then your only job after that is just try and imitate that sound. And the thing is, in video game, a lot of people don't know that, but most of the time we need to do 15, 20 variation for each status, which means that you need to die 20 times, and it needs to be different every time in terms of sound. And a lot of time people just go like, oh, and then second sound, oh, and third sound, oh. And they think it's different. I can give very precise instruction. Do it with the letter O, use OA, and do exactly like that. So it's a lot different from a voice director who don't have that kind of capacity with their voice. I can do with my voice what I want people to do while recording. So yeah, and I ended up teaching that, because right now I'm teaching at the National Institute of Sound and Images in Montreal and other places, and I'm teaching normal voice actor how to warm up their voices for grunts, barks, screams, pain, and I'm teaching them with throat singing and with harsh vocal techniques so that they don't
unbelievable.
They don't destroy their voice when they do that. Because even if we do it, there's so many video games out there, we can't do them all. so normal voice actor need to know how to scream properly.
You're giving them secrets. Give them the secrets.
Yes, some secrets, not all of them.
You got to pay for all the secrets.
Some secrets, not all of them. But even for environmental sound, like, what should you do when you block with a shield? What kind of sound that you have to do, and how to do variation to make sure that every time you do something, it's different. How to invent spells, because sometimes you go into a recording session and they announce you, oh, by the way, it's Wizard. We don't have any script.
You have to make shit up. Yeah.
Can you invent a language? And it can sound like any known languages. So you have to write on the spot, invent something. And that's why, for Guardian of the Galaxy, we can talk about it.
I was about to bring it up, yeah.
I invented 5 different alien languages, because once we were able to establish the different voice technique that we were going to use for the aliens, then after that, I was like, okay, this voice technique, there's a lot of W, there's CHU and other stuff. So I was trying to play with the sound, and okay, this kind of consonants and syllables. I was able to see what were the easiest word or small word that were coming out of that voice technique, and then I basically had 80 pages of script in English. So I was starting, and of course I was kind of imagining what would be an alien language, because in some known languages we don't use the or le the same way. We don't place the word in the same order. Yeah. So I was like, so I can play with that. I don't need to be word per word specific.
Exactly. Yes.
And of course I needed to keep the intent, because if the sentences is a question and the character is annoyed, you have to keep that, because this is voice acting, and you have to keep the interrogation form like at the end of the sentence. So I kind of build up a kind of a Google Translate between aliens and English, and if a word was coming back in the same context, I looked at my document. Okay, I say this word, so I'm going to bring it back. So at least it gives an impression.
It's a coercive experience. Yeah.
Exactly, that it was a real discussion, even if I didn't build the languages to the extent of Klingon or other languages in sci-fi movie. We didn't have the time nor the budget for that, but I wanted to make sure, it's Marvel, it's Disney. I wanted to deliver the best thing out there. So I was like, I'm going to go the extra mile for it. So I work a lot of time on making sure that everything pronunciation and the actor, because I had a lot of, once we knew who the cast was, I work with all the voice actor to make sure when there were alien languages involved that they were able to nail it. Like not struggling with that. It was fluid the way they were saying it. So yeah, it took a couple of months, 80 pages of script, 5 alien languages. So right now I can say that I have the experience to actually do some really good gibberish that doesn't look like gibberish.
So did Lord Worm, but
yeah.
We got to give a shout out to Steve, though. I feel like Steve's been getting a lot of press, a lot of accolade, and he deserves it. And I think that we have a media blackout, but he doesn't. And my original intention was to have him here with us tonight, but I never took the extra steps to have him. So let's give a shout out to Steve, and you say his last name because
Steve Shupkowski.
Thank you.
Shupkowski. Yeah, exactly. And Steve is the reason that everything happened for Guardian of the Galaxy. I remember the first meeting we had in Hydos Montreal studio. And I just go there, I see a guy with a baseball cap and a small metal shirt, long hair. And I was like, oh, yeah. Like right off the bat, I was like, yeah. And then he started showing me some visuals from the aliens and creature. And right there, we were already in a discussion where we were talking about the cantina scene from Star Wars. Because one thing that I hate in science fiction is that you go somewhere and everybody speaks English.
Yeah, it's so stupid. Makes no sense.
For me, it doesn't make any sense. Like different creatures and alien comings from different galaxies. I mean, I know Star Trek came out with the universal translator thing, but I think that's just lazy. It is the easy way out, but they actually like at some point they were not lazy. They created a lot of languages. The Klingon, which is spoken by a lot of, not a lot, but a few thousand people and maybe more, and different languages, and the Vulcan languages. But at some point they just stop. And the same thing for Star Wars. It's just with very recently with The Mandalorian and with Boba Fett and maybe, one or two places in the new movies that they started using those sound again. Because you have to go back to the first Star Wars, not the first of the trilogy, but the first that went out, to really dive into that strange, noisy universe where not all the aliens speak English, right? And right off the bat, we were discussing that, and I knew we had the same vision, like in the sense that we need something unique for the aliens, and it's not English. And there's a lot of English in the game. If you just look at the main voice actor, it's everywhere. But for these creatures and these aliens, we wanted to do something really, really unique for them. So yeah, Steve and that's the thing. You don't end up being friend with a lot of people that you work in the video game industry. And we ended up, we worked so closely for a year and a half. We had almost at some point meeting every day that, of course we were discussing the project, but we were discussing life and a lot of different things. And we ended up being good friends. And this guy, the job that he did, he did a presentation very recently at the GDC, the Game Developer Conference. And he showed me his presentation. And it's amazing the amount of work that this guy did for the audio. Not only did he deliver all the audio for the game, he created a band and he wrote songs.
Yeah. Who was there was someone running audio that's also part of that. What was his name?
Nicolas Boudreau.
Yeah, he was cool too. Yeah.
Exactly. So he went the extra mile, not only to take care of everything, but even created the band with all the work he had to do, and wrote some killer songs for the Marvel Guardian of the Galaxy soundtrack.
Which is why the game is winning countless awards.
Yeah, and he's being nominated and has been winning so many awards for the audio because it's just a feat of strength and something absolutely incredible. And for me, like, I'm just glad we were able to be part of that. You know, where
we did the announcer, we did like a Zoom announce of what game we were all, because we all knew we had gotten the game. And then this is the first time I met Steve and he was there and he was sitting in his like cool audio chair and we announced the game.
Oh, and I remember seeing all your faces because for me, I knew because I started working on the game months before all of us, all of you. And then I remember we did this meeting and he edit a small video.
Yeah, a trailer type thing. Yeah.
A trailer with the Marvel, beginning like
because we didn't know it was Marvel. We knew it was big. We didn't know what it was.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember because we were on Zoom and I could see most of your faces on there. Like some people were crying, some people were just couldn't stop smiling, and especially when the Marvel thing, like, all the faces like, oh my God, we're gonna be in a Marvel game. And then after the song from Marvel Garden of the Galaxy started and you could see the main character, and that's where all hell broke loose because all of you like, and I remember you like smiling.
It's my favorite. Like I'm not the biggest Marvel, hate me if you want it, whatever. But I do like Guardians of the Galaxy. There's something cool about it. So I was definitely stoked to be a part of it.
No, definitely, and it's Marvel is a few steps from Disney, right?
Exactly, which is very close to Star Wars, right?
Yeah, which is very close to a lot of things, So for me, that was like, okay, so this is now we can say that because of course with all the other projects that we work on, they are amazing, but this one feels special, not only because of all the work we did, but because of the plays that metal vocalists got into this game.
We had some monstrous vocalists in it too. They're like, let alone myself, but both Alyssa and Vicky.
Alyssa was Vicky,
was massive.
Simon from Beyond Creation, and then all the rest of the crew like Jeff, Corinne, Philippe, Marie-Claude, Jessica, and most of other metal vocalists in the Monster Factory, and not only that. We were included in advance in the creative process. Yeah. Not only call at the last minute and say, hey, we need zombies next week. Can you do that? Yeah. Boom, we go there. And it's cool to do that, but it's more, I think, rewarding.
I think it's a proof. I think it's more of a proof of what being involved with the Monster Factory can bring you.
Yeah. Yeah,
as opposed to just filling a gap that you have. You can build something with the Monster Factory.
No, definitely. It's something we can do now. Sound creation. We can take a character and basically tell video game company what the sound should be like based on, because that's the thing. When I started to work on Guardian of the Galaxy, my first order of business is that you see the movie collection
yes,
back there, and it's just a small part of it. I ended up listening to probably 200 to 250 sci-fi movie to build a document basically with, okay, in the sci-fi world exists these types of creature, humanoid or not, these type of creature, what are their facial distinction, what type of sound they're doing, is it sound design, is it human? So I ended up with a 90-page document with basically like kind of different archetype for so I went the extra mile with Steve, really to deliver something absolutely awesome. And I'm a video game addict, a movie addict and a video game addict. So every time there's a new movie with creatures or zombie, or every time there's a new video game, I buy it and I play it, just to listen to what they're doing.
It's market research.
Exactly. And it's tax deductible.
I was going to say that, but I chose not to, but okay.
And it's tax deductible. It's research and development. But that's the thing. And recently when we announced the international team, I received a lot of email from other metal vocalists like, we want to do that too. We want to do that too. And he
was really good. He sent us a whole document about how to field these people. It was amazing. And he was like, he sent us a whole document. I signed an NDA, so I probably can talk about the document. No. He's so professional that he sent everyone involved in the Monster Factory a document about how to handle the release, which is why I love working with Sébastien.
No, I'm I'm precise. I'm not gonna say I'm
very focused. I like it very
annoying.
Much.
I'm a little bit annoying, but I'm really focused. Yeah. No, exactly. But and that's the thing. A lot of people think because they can scream, they can be good voice actor. Not necessarily. It's not because you are amazing at being a vocalist that you can be an amazing voice actor. Of course, it helps, but it's an entire other kind of skill set that you need to acquire and work on. And your career as a voice actor, you need to be almost as much as dedicated as you are to being a metal vocalist, because there's so many things you need to learn, to practice. So just being able to be, to do an horrible sound doesn't mean that you'd be an amazing voice actor. And that's what I learned when I first started, because that's what I thought I only needed. Just do.
Is that because, and this is me just digging up shit and don't name people, did you bring people in and they couldn't perform to the way that you expected them to, despite the fact them being good extreme vocalists?
Never, because I prepare all of them. Every time we have a contract, every time I sit down with the team, I go through the sound, I explain how to do the sound, I record it, I send it to them, and then we have a second meeting where we work on it, and then another meeting where we work on it, and then another meeting where we work on it.
As we're getting into the global Monster Factory, you can't do that.
Well, I still can. So I'll do it as much as possible. And even now I'm doing it right now. Not with you, not tonight, but I'm still doing it. But I'm working on training videos.
Let's open the questions. Raise your digital hand if you'd like to ask a question about Sébastien translating over to teaching extreme vocals, whether it be for voice acting or for extreme vocalists.
Or if you want to go back to some of the stuff we cover also we talked about.
But it was the last thing that I had for you that I definitely want to get covered. Sick de vitesse, go for it. He's a little bit under the weather.
Hello. So, I'm a little bit under the weather. My throat feels a little bit weird, but with beer, it's still better. I don't know why.
Tomorrow won't be as good, though. Drink water.
Yeah, I'm going to get water. But anyway, my question is, what is the weirdest voice you did for anything? The weirdest, can be anything, but the weirdest that comes to mind.
Okay, I once had to do a goat, an evil goat.
Ooh.
And that was a creature. So like I said, sometimes I don't even know what I'm about to do because we sign non-disclosure agreement and we don't get to see the creature before we go in the studio. We arrive at the studio, we have the order. Oh, okay. And this one was like, what do I do? Like I don't want to go to the thing, But finally, when I did that, I'm gonna, So I started playing with it. So I ended up doing goat sound for an evil goat, and after that, they added some real goat sound to the voice that I was doing for the that creature. But that was the first one that I was like, what am I going to do? So I'm really going to do the the goat voice, because for me that was like just too cliche kind of. But finally I did it. So that was weird, but yeah. So I was for 2 hours, I was doing, I was doing the evil goat.
I tried to imagine that in a Necrotic Mutation album.
Well, maybe in some hidden tracks where we
that could be interesting, like an interlude
where we are
between 2 tracks.
Yeah, where we are simulating the sacrifice of a goat.
So you're doing a trailer, a fake movie trailer, but sound. Like it's the evil goat.
Yeah. Marshmallows.
Coming this February.
Yeah, but that was the one of the weirdest, but one of the thing, and actually Matt participated in that recording, but I can't say the project because it's not out yet.
I don't even know what it is. Yeah.
But we ended up recording teeth sound.
Yeah. It was so much fun.
Oh.
Yeah.
Like just teeth.
Yeah.
Teeth sound.
That was a fun
weird.
night. That was
Fun.
Yeah.
For like a long time. And we were 15 people and just basically changing. 5 people were getting in and then they were getting out, 5 new people. So we ended up all doing teeth and slurps like.
It was really fun. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was weird too. Teeth sound. I was like, that was a first.
That's weird. That sounds sick, but that's weird.
Yeah. But together, like when you put all the 15 voice actor sound together, like I heard a little bit about him. I asked the sound engineer just to mix it for me a little bit. That was weird. Like it felt really creepy. Like I didn't.
The perfect thing to go to sleep to.
Yeah, exactly. Like teeth sound, like small teeth, like kind of gnawing at you. Like I was
Is it like an ASMR simulator?
The worst kind. Yalang.
Yes. How's it going, Seb?
Hey, what's up, my man?
Yeah. So long time no talk.
Yeah.
Obviously, I had you on the podcast back in the day, and you weren't even allowed to talk about Guardians of the Galaxy back then.
I remember, yeah.
You kept talking about this AAA game, and you were not allowed to talk about Guardians of the Galaxy, so it was pretty funny.
It was hard to not.
Yeah, I remember
talk
you
about
biting your lip like I can't say anything.
Oh yeah, I was probably pinching, because you only see here in the podcast, and I was probably like hitting myself.
So
down there
for my question to go with what Matt wants the direction to be. He wants us to talk about mostly your switch to being someone who teaches vocals.
A boring teacher.
No. There's a lot of great extreme vocal coaches out there.
Exactly,
No,
it's
definitely.
something that's up and coming, right? Because there's more and more of metal extreme vocal teachers. What is the most difficult part about teaching extreme vocals compared to teaching what you do at the Monster Factory? What's the biggest difference and what's the biggest challenge?
Well, and my answer might surprise you. The biggest challenges for a harsh vocal teacher is basically that even if we know a little bit about how we produce the sound, we don't have any real scientific studies about how we can really produce those sounds. So even with the amount of knowledge that we have today, we're still unsure about how to explain it properly with the right scientific terms and how to name what we do properly. Like, I'm going to give you an example. You're all aware of what we call fry scream, right? You all know about fry. Well, your definition of fry, somebody else's definition of fry, and sometimes people do fry, but they just go a little bit higher and they don't think it's fry. Fry for me doesn't mean anything. It doesn't describe a physical phenomenon. It's mostly an aesthetic terms. And for me, what should define the wording of how we teach that should be science, not aesthetic. And I think that's and it's not only my biggest challenge. I think it's harsh vocal teacher biggest challenge is to be able to base our teaching on science, real science. Not only, I've done that with my voice and it's cool, so I can teach other. No, what's really happening? It's moving, and again. Maybe we should name things properly instead of just inventing those weird name for vocal techniques that is not entirely related to what's actually happening. And that's why I love throat singing so much, is that for me, it's really a gateway to metal, to being a metal, a voice metal coach, because we go into so many details about vocal distortion and what's happening, really happening, because we can base, there have been so many studies about throat singing that we can name things properly. And I use that to explain what's happening with the metal voice. But of course, again, there might be slight differences for the metal voice, but we don't know about it really, because we don't have anything like officially. Of course, our friend Enrico Di Lorenzo from Idiot's Divinity, if you know a bit about Idiot, the band, he's a doctor, is an otorhinolaryngologist. Is one of the guy that knows what he's talking about, because he looked at it and he can explain it, with science, and he can explain what's moving. But again, we need formal scientific studies about harsh vocal.
Maybe you're going to be the one to put the names on all of those things.
I think that's exactly the goal.
Yeah. For me, it's not. I always enjoy naming things properly. Once I got into harsh vocal and throat singing, for me, like, how to explain what I do, because I've been teaching throat singing and harsh vocal for more than 14 years now.
Which is why I hit you up to interview you the first time. I sort of knew you were doing the video game thing, but Paul Z of Ages, of Blackguard, is the reason why I hit you up to have you on the podcast back on episode 13, was because he had mentioned that you were teaching him.
Yeah, no, I and that's the thing. It's kind of a unique approach. Is I teach about harsh vocal, but I go through throat singing to teach harsh vocal. Because again, I've explained it at the beginning. It's vocal distortion. It's slightly different, but the control and precision that you can have with throat singing. A lot of problem for metal vocalists is the use of pressure. Sometimes they use too much pressure, and sometimes they don't have enough pressure. And we can still produce the sound that we are producing, even if we are using too much pressure. Of course, we might end up hurting our voices a little bit more, but we can still produce those sounds. With throat singing, it's impossible to produce Tuvan throat singing, to produce the sound and to do it correctly, and to use pressure. Too much or too less pressure. It's impossible. So for me, I use throat singing to calibrate our pressure control muscles.
Amazing. It's like a valve almost.
Exactly, because when we are able to control sometimes really slight form of vocal distortion, if we are able to control that sound, it's a lot of work to be that precise. Then after that, once we go into harsh vocal, we can correct that kind of using too much pressure or because we have, use our muscles or body and worked on what I call muscle memory to make sure that when we go into vocal distortion, we don't use too much or too many or just less pressure. So for me, it's really like getting through throat singing to make sure that, and of course, to be able to have a real warm up workout, Like, how do you warm up vocal distortion?
I think it's super important. I don't think anyone has done it properly. And I'm from the school of Melissa Cross, who's obviously the OG of extreme vocal coaching and deserves the respect there. But there is no specified warm-up for extreme vocals.
Exactly. But I like I said, I start with very small. Some people could call it fry, but I won't. But very subtle warm up for what I call the vocal distortion muscles. So sometimes it's just basically a small and then at some point, now of course it's late. I've done a recording session yesterday. I'm not doing the sound properly, and I know, but at some point you can hear when the vocal cords are synchronized, and you can create very softly a small vocal distortion that produces a double vibration of the vocal cords. And for me to warm up properly, to build yourself up to the full extent of your vocal distortion power, you have to start there. This is for me the first stage. And then after that, I go into Tibetan and Tuvan throat singing, because they're a little bit more pressure than the first one, but still it requires a lot of control to be able to do that. But it requires just a little bit more pressure than the first one, but it's still the same thing. It's still a double vibration on the vocal cords. And then the other step is I go into what I call the Cookie Monster stage. The Cookie Monster is basically the first warm up for the false vocal cord. Sis for cookie, cookie, cookie. So you can just basically work with that kind of voice without any extreme pressure. Cookie. And when you do that, you actually activate the false vocal cord. But you need to warm them up because there's still muscle attached to.
Because that's what hurts. Honestly, that's what hurts. If I jump into a jam after a long time, it's not my vocal cords that hurt. It's the muscles around them.
Exactly. But because you don't warm, everything else properly. But for me, it's basically start with pressure control. People don't do a lot of exercise, breathing exercise or proper breathing exercise to make sure that they are able to really control very precisely the pressure that is going out as going in. It's both way. But again, if we come back to vocal distortion, there's Cookie Monster producing really small with basically no pressure distortion from the false vocal cord. And that's the thing, the false vocal cord, you can almost activate them as throat singing. Because throat singing, you can go, but if I try to activate the same way false vocal cords, it sounds a little bit different, but it's almost the same. So basically, this is a really smooth form of false vocal cord activation. You don't need to put a lot of pressure, and you still can just warm up that element of from your vocal distortion. And there's a few other exercises, but like I said, most of what I'm teaching is coming from what I've learned in throat singing. And it's funny because as soon as I discovered throat singing, I basically became a better metal vocalist. I had more control. Like back in the 1990s when I was singing, of course, I always tried to pronounce. But a lot of metal vocalists, we're still in the...
Yeah, I'm just going to make the sound. I got the tone. I'm happy with the tone, and that's what it is.
And then we go... Sorry, I saw Bree in the chat. I was like, Chris Barn and Bree, I have to do
I do want to ask that question. This right here is going to be the section that I turn into the reel that I'm going to collaborate with La Fabrique des Most on. So keep that in mind as you answer it. Why is Chris Barnes not the way that he used to be, in your opinion?
Okay. Well, when I've listened to sorry, it's not funny, but it's a little bit funny. When I listened to their last album, 6 Feet Under, I understood why they disabled the comments under the video. I was like, oh, they disabled the comments. That's not good. But for me, when I listen to it, I hear a lot of damage, and the damage is basically there's no longer enough pressure to sustain his really growly and voice. It's basically pressure control, and I don't know if it's coming from just him being out of shape, or is smoking too much pot, and he's no longer able to really control his breathing and his pressure properly. But for me, like when I listen to that, because of course you can imagine when I go to see live shows, I always analyze other metal vocalists. Like I listen to, this is my main focus. I'm like, and sometime, if they haven't warmed up properly, or even if they had sometime really, and it's really sometime at the end, the last few songs, you can hear like that their vocal distortion is, and sometime at the end of some sentences, is not like, it's not beautiful. It goes like, it and this is where Chris Barn is at. Mostly, he sounds like when metal vocalists are out of breath and can no longer keep the pressure that you need to have to maintain the vocal distortion that you are doing. Because when you have no longer that support, your throat and your vocal cords and everything is trying to force itself into still producing that vocal distortion. And that's where you end up hurting yourself. And that's what Chris Barn sounds like at the moment, like an out of breath metal vocalist. I'm sorry, Chris. If you but the thing is, that's the thing I have to say. One of the first bands that I bought a cassette of was Cannibal Corpse Eaten Back to Life. I am a huge Chris Barn fan. Huge one. I remember one of the first show that I've played in Rimouski was with Cannibal Corpse.
Because Rimouski used to be a tour stop in Quebec, which is amazing.
So and it's funny because after that, I went into so many other things. I kind of lost the focus on many of the new metal bands out there. And I was aware of 6 Feet Under, but I've listened to the first album and I was like, okay, this is good. It's still Chris Barn voices, But after that, I kind of lose the focus on all of that. And when I came back, with Necrotic Mutation and more officially into death metal, I've started to listen back. And of course, I couldn't miss like a lot of people actually did video. And there's a video of Chris Barn on YouTube, which is basically just the E and and of course, I ended up listening to it, and I was like, I don't know if it's because he's in a record deal and he still have to produce album, and that he is obligated to do so. Because for me, like, if I were to sing like that on an album, I would never release that. For real. And again, I mean, no disrespect to him. He's an amazing vocalist, but right now, like, this is a point where I would say my goodbye to being a metal vocalist before doing that. Like, honestly. So I'm sure he's conscious, he's aware of that. But I don't know if it's because he has a record deal that he needs to do a certain amount of albums. And
I don't know. Brian Slagle's really cool, and from what I've heard, I've never met him, but everyone that I've met that knows Brian Slagle says he's really fucking cool. I don't know. I know that If I sounded like that,
Yeah,
I would want someone to tell me before I release it that we shouldn't release it.
But I'm sure people told them. Because
I don't
to me,
know.
it's impossible that nobody listened to that and said, well, okay, ship that. You know? Like,
He's a blocking machine. If you don't like him, he blocks you now. Grayson, Beans and Breakdown.
Yep.
Go for it.
Hey guys. Hey Seb, thanks so much for sharing everything. This has been like a really awesome time hearing about La Fabrique des Monstres.
oh, you've said it so well.
And
Thank
I'm
you.
an American. That's crazy.
Yeah, no, exactly.
My question for you is, what would be your dream role? Obviously, you're a sci-fi fan, and I would assume a classic horror fan. If there was any role in the world that you could go out and voice act for within the video game or movie realm, what would that be?
Anything in Star Wars. I would play a robot or a small creature in the background, you know, whatever in Star Wars. You know, I was lucky because I did voice the Nemesis in Resident Evil in Dead by Daylight, which is not a small character. And not a lot of people know that, but I'm not sure if I can say it, but I'll say it because I did audition for it. I did the voice of the Hulk in Marvel Guardian of the Galaxy. So I said Hulk smash with my big voice. So I basically did the Hulk. That's a huge accomplishment for me. So, but other than those two, anything in Star Wars, like, I don't know, you know, of course, not the voice of Darth Vader because I'm no, but whatever in Star Wars. I could play, you know, the garbage disposal thing. I could do the sound of that. I don't mind. Whatever, man. Like anything in Star Wars, I would smile for the rest of my life. Even a small thing.
Amazing. Let's do it. I'm in. Colby.
So I was just curious, Seb, how you got into doing like death metal vocals to start with, and then why you decided to go through the teaching route that you do as well now.
Well, it's kind of a funny story. When I started listening to metal music, it's because there was a girl in my classroom that was really lovely, and I wanted to get her attention. And her boyfriend was listening to metal music. I was like, well, if I want to attract her attention, I need to listen to metal music. And the funny thing happened. I started to listen to bands just so I could talk to her about it. And at some point, I was like, I really enjoyed the music. Like at the beginning, I was like, what is that? And I was listening to basically Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, and then Accept. Also, like really old heavy metal power metal band. And then from there, it went straight to Sepultura and Slayer. And from there to Napalm Death, Deicide, and Suffocation Obituary. And that was in probably a 2-year period. So I went from Metallica, Judas Priest, the first kind of few months, and then right after that, and then, of course, and when I started to listen to Cannibal Corpse and to the other band, I was so intrigued by their voices, and I was like, man, I want to do that. How can somebody do that with their voices? And the funny thing is, I was talking about Cookie Monster, but I was actually watching Sesame Street when I was little, in English, even if I'm French. And I remember the voice. Cheers for Cookie. And that was a weird voice. And I was always attracted to the villains. Like in the cartoons. Like I remember Commander Cobra. Hey, G.I. Joe, let's get him. like the way he was using vocal distortion. So I was always intrigued and fascinated by weird voices. So of course that when I listened to death metal vocalists, I was like, fuck yeah, I want to do that, you know? So I kind of forgot about the girl because I found something really, really cool, which doesn't require to send a small letter. Would you go out with me? Yes or no?
You got the best part of the deal, Seb.
Yeah, I didn't have to ask that to death metal. Like the answer was yes right off the bat without even asking the question. But I was really into that. And of course, when I started to learn throat singing, the way my teacher was explaining things to me, he was explaining to me things with, physical elements, with science. And for me, I was fascinated by that because it allowed me a bit to explain how I was able to produce the sound that I'm producing as a death metal vocalist. So for me, that kind of learning how to properly talk about something, a subject as complex and fascinating as metal vocals and extreme voices, I was like, if I'm, because of course at some point people were asking me like, because I think they people still think I'm a good death metal vocalist, but back in the days they of course they were thinking like that. So that's why they probably like ask me, hey, do you have any tricks that you could teach me? And that's basically how I started to teach. Like at the beginning, it wasn't something official, but more and more people kept coming back to me. And I was like, I need to build something like a proper warm-up routines for metal vocalists. And of course, over the years, I think it got better. The more I know about the voice, now it works, the more I change small things here and there in my training lessons. Basically because we never stop to learn. And I think that at some point, once we have all the scientific data that we need for harsh vocal, I'm just trying to explain it the best that I can. And maybe when we have that kind of studies, maybe I'm going to have to change how I'm teaching it, because it might change a lot of people's perspective on how they teach harsh vocal. And I'm 46. At some point, you have to pass on the knowledge that you have acquired in life. And that's basically why I teach voice acting, voice actor. I teach environmental sound. And of course, I'm trying to teach the team from the Monster Factory everything that I know. Because I'm 46. In 10 years, I'm going to be 56.
I don't think it has the same implication as extreme drumming. I think that extreme vocals will continue far into your 70s, 80s, and hypothetically 90s, dude.
I'm not sure.
I am rather confident. I think extreme drumming going 300, 320 BPM has an age limit. Extreme vocals, I don't think does.
Well, who is the older extreme vocalist?
Well, in this room, in this room, it's
no,
you. But...
No, but yeah, fuck you. No, but really, like, is it
Devin Townsend? Who is older than Devin?
How old is he?
He must be 50.
Yeah. I've never heard of a 60-year-old metal vocalist, like a death metal vocalist, like
Not
harsh.
Yet. It's coming.
Not yet.
Yeah, it's coming. Yeah, but it's the generational. It makes sense because, how old is Corpse Grinder? He must be 50 something.
Yeah, but I do think also, because again, it's without a proper warm up routine.
Yeah, that's a good question. Like, why do you think age would have an influence on how long someone can keep going?
The body gets old. The vocal cords and the instrument, everything is there. It's so tiny. And after a while, it's just, the vocal cords, you can have nodules. It's more difficult to do certain sounds. Like even for me, like I need to warm up more to do some different
Stuff that back in the day you could have done
of course
easier.
Easier, really. Even if I'm more diverse now than I was before.
And you're using your voice way more than before too.
Yeah, but it requires a more warm up from what I do, and I don't know.
I'm actually very interested to see how this spans out. Like, will extreme metal bands have to stop because extreme metal vocalists can't physically do it anymore? There was never a thought that I had.
It's really, extreme. It's not that new, but of course, it's something new. Extreme metal vocalists.
It's from the 90s, right? Let's say 89, 88.
No, but
91.
it's new enough. It's new enough that we don't know how whole can we go, right?
Exactly.
And from that, we can see how long can other extreme metal vocalists go. And at some point, I think there's going to be an age marker where after maybe, I don't know, 60, 62, it's going to be too hard for some people. It is for Chris Barnes.
I don't know if I'm putting you guys on the spot or not. I know Matt has some young ones sleeping right now. But say you guys were drunk goblins in Montreal going to eat a poutine for the first time. What would that sound like?
Let's go eat the poutine. Hey, Matt, you want poutine? Oh, my master wants poutine. Let's eat the poutine. It's so tasty. Oh, so good.
Is that good enough for you?
Love it.
Last question, Nat.
I was wondering if there is anything you do or have done in the past to increase lung capacity, and if you have any tips for anyone looking to do the same.
Well, the thing is, I did not know about lung capacity until until a few years after I started to sing metal. Because for me, I was like, just practicing, right? And I remember if you listen to my first demo and you listen to what I did 3 years later, there's a huge difference into being able to sustain a sound and being able to keep the note longer. But the thing is, it's not more about lung capacity for me than it is about pressure control. A lot of people think that when we sing loud, like metal vocalists, we use a lot of air, right? It basically there's so much pressure going out, you must be using a lot of air. Therefore, I must require a huge lung capacity, right?
I can attest to the opposite of that because I have terrible lung capacity and I am loud as fuck.
Yeah, no, but is that when you blow? There's wind. It doesn't move.
Amazing.
Right?
Do it again, please. It's true, though.
It's true. A little bit.
Yeah.
So being loud, being able to project, has nothing to do, for me, like it has a little bit to do with lung capacity, but mostly about pressure control. You need to be able to focus. Even if you don't have a lot of lung capacity, you need to really be able to control how you can push the pressure and be loud and sustain longer note with that. So for me, the focus would be to work more on breathing exercise. Like some of the exercise that I do involve mostly just putting an obstacle when you breathe. Like basically I do it's when you blow balloons for a kid's anniversary, you do that, there's a really small hole that you create. But if you do that, for me, one of the warm-up exercises that I do is basically I just use a small hole and then I breathe in and I breathe out.
So like you're sucking helium and then letting it back out.
Exactly, but without the helium, of course. But it's just that it's warming up, and you make everything works, like the muscle that you use for an expiration. And after that, there's a few other exercises, but there's one that I call the small dog. And it's basically just doing but that being able to control the volume of air that is going out and going in, and be able to have the exact same amount going that fast is really hard.
It's a mad diaphragm workout. It's insane.
It is. And for me, it kind of show you how in control you are of the muscles that control the pressure. So for me, it's those exercises that helps. And again, throat singing. Throat singing, you have to be so precise with the pressure control, because if you aren't, you're going to lose the sound. So for me, acquiring that kind of control with throat singing, you can take that and export it into harsh vocals or into other form of singing. You know, that's the thing. Even throat singing, they use it in some voice therapy. People who have a hole there to speak with that. After that, some of the things that were developed in the recent years is using throat singing to make people
to re-educate people how to speak.
Exactly.
So people that have a tracheotomy, they would re-educate them with throat singing to re-educate them how to speak.
I guess it strengthens everything as well.
Again, you work for me, like working with throat singing, you work on the micro things with fine tunings, a lot of what you have to work on that makes you a good metal vocalist. You're fine tuning how to use a resonance chamber. You're fine tuning the thong placement. You're fine tuning your control, your pressure control, and your control over activating the vocal distortion. So for me, like all this small work, when you're good at that, you can be a better metal vocalist. Like I say in French, and I'm gonna try and translate it in English, and it doesn't sound that so cheesy. But before being a storm, the wind is a breeze, right? So for me, in order to become a storm, you have to control the breeze. And throat singing is all about fine-tuning and controlling the breeze. And for me, it allows you to be a better storm after that.
Very, very, very interesting, Seb. Where can people hit you up for lessons? Are you at that point yet, or are you still building the whole platform?
Well, actually, I'm doing a lot of one-on-one.
I think that like a lot of my listeners might hit you up just for that. So where should they go?
No, definitely. Well, now it's basically you just add me on Facebook or on Instagram, because I'm building a platform for that, but it's going to take not a long time, because I have so many things going on right now. I need to focus on a few priorities, but I do have the time. I'll, a few times a month, I always have students for harsh vocal, but also for throat singing. Because again, like I said, throat singing for me is how you can fine tune a lot of things to be better at harsh vocal. So a lot of metal vocalists are coming to me, and it's funny because most of them end up doing throat singing or doing sounds. Oh my God, I can do that. I was like, yeah, you can. You just need the proper guidance and a few adjustment here and there. But yeah, and most of them come back to me a few months after, or sometimes years after. I was like, wow, what you've shown me, like the small throat singing exercise got me way better with my metal voice. So, hit me on Instagram, on Facebook. Probably by the end of the year, I would have that website up, and that there's a lot more things to come. But yeah, if you want to have a one-on-one voice lessons, even for harsh vocal throat singing, or even for, some people want to get into voice acting. How do you start a career in voice acting? What do you do? Whether, a lot of people have questioned about that, and I do teach that a little bit. So social media.
This was amazing. I really enjoyed myself tonight. We're going to keep hanging out, and you guys should have been here if you're not here tonight to keep hanging out with us, to keep having discussions. Thirsty Thursday live interviews happen the first Thursday of every month, and it's always a blast, and I love the community that is here with us tonight. Everyone unmute yourselves and give Sébastien Croteau the warm welcome that he deserves. Sébastien, you will get to choose what creature all these people are going to sound like right now as they welcome you out of this amazing episode.
Okay, I am a sucker for zombies. Okay, so please
direct us out. You got this.
Okay, so zombies, you got two options. You can do something really old school. Ooh! You can do inhale. Ooh! Or you can do exhale throaty stuff. So whatever you're comfortable with, just take that sound, and after my countdown, we're just going to do like sound, no words, just a sound for like 5 seconds. All right? So 3, 2, 1. Oh my God, you were amazing.
Hey, thank you all so much for listening right today. And you know that I love and appreciate that. Now, you may have noticed that my audio sounded a little bit different on this episode, and that is because lately I've been letting my 5-year-old daughter set up my audio equipment before my interviews, and I typically always check to make sure that everything is plugged in correctly, but this time I didn't, because we were putting them to sleep and things were rushed. So sadly, my microphone was not connected, and I used the audio from my Zoom recording. So I apologize for that. I apologize for it sounding differently, but you live and you learn, and I have learned to always make sure that my 5-year-old daughter has plugged things in properly. Massive cheers to all of you for putting up with that. This was a massive hang. You should have been there. It was so much fun. Sébastien is obviously an amazing guest, an amazing speaker, but he's also brilliant. I'm very, very stoked to be a part of the Monster Factory. There are massive things coming up in the future with them, and I'm very, very happy to be along for the ride. Huge cheers to Sébastien. Can't wait to have you back on the podcast for a 4th time. Now, if you enjoyed this Vox and Hops episode, you should sign up to the Vox and Hops Metal Podcasts mailing list. You can do that on my website, voxandhops.com. That's VOXANDHOPS.com. And when you do that, you shall receive 2 emails a month. That will include all the details of everything that has happened recently in the world of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast. You get to see which episodes I've dropped, which episodes I have coming up. You'll get to see if I've been a guest on someone else's podcast. You will also get to see which albums the Vox and Hops album review crew have reviewed recently. You'll get to see which albums Jerry Monk, the metal architect himself, has added to the Brewtal Awakenings playlist, and you will be the first people to hear about any projects that I have in the works. There is just so much going on in the world of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast. I hate for you to miss a single thing, so sign up to the mailing list. The Vox and Hops Metal Podcast is brought to you by Sound Talent Media and Evergreen Podcasts. I hope you have a glorious rest of the week. I will be back next week with yet again 1 episode on Tuesday. But until then, remember to enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. Cheers, Vox and Hops heads.